Hello, everyone, and welcome again to our third session within the webinar series. And again, for our admitted graduate students, and I appreciate those that have joined us and anybody who's viewing this at a later time. So today we are going to discuss housing opportunities for graduate students, both on campus and off campus. So we have someone joining us, Jessica Malone from our on-campus RIT Housing Department. So she'll discuss graduate housing opportunities. And then Virginia Guerrero, she is a grad assistant who is also a student at RIT, and she works with our off-campus student population and assists the staff at RIT from that standpoint. So she's going to discuss any of the off-campus opportunities housing-wise, and just discuss a little bit about her background and how that process played out for her. So we'll get started right now and jump in. So I'll turn it over to Jessica, and then we'll jump into Virginia after that. So thanks again, everybody, and Jessica, take it away.
All right, well, thank you for having me this morning, and congratulations on coming to RIT next fall for all of our new accepted grads. We do have a lot of graduate students in our housing. So for RIT Housing, it's a secure, supportive, and inclusive environment for living and learning. We house over 6,000 students with 20 different housing options, 5 different housing types, ranging from residence halls, apartment complexes, Greek houses. We have our RIT and property off campus. So we have a lot of variety. All of our housing business is done through the My Life portal. So this is where you would do all of your housing business as far as applying. And then once you're in RIT housing, this is where you could do maintenance requests and check in on your housing applications for the future. As I mentioned, we have many different types of housing, and graduate students are assigned throughout all of our housing types. So there's not one area that graduate students lean towards. It's really more about finding the right fit based on amenities and price points about what you're looking for, your different lifestyle needs. So there's furnished and unfurnished units available. So it really depends on your preferences. Graduate students are assigned on a space available basis. So we're accepting applications now, and as spaces open up, we're working off of our wait lists and putting students into those spaces. We have different varieties. So if you're looking for more budget friendly, River Knoll, the RIT Inn, and Perkins Green are kind of those most inexpensive options. And then our high amenity options would be more of the Global Village and the University Commons suites. So if you visit our website, you can use our comparison tool and kind of pick the things that are most important to you of what you're looking for in housing and see how the different complexes relate to each other. Here's another look of some visuals of some of our housing options. Perkins Green, River Knoll. The one thing to note is River Knoll is our one unfurnished option. So if you're interested in purchasing your own furniture and wanted to do your own setup, that would be in River Knoll. Global Village, University Commons, RIT Inn, and our residence halls. There are a lot of benefits of RIT housing. We have our easy online services and contract through the My Life portal, which is something with your username and student password that you would be able to have access to. We promote a safe and secure environment, including card swipe and key access, the RIT Safe app, which has a lot of features related to housing, and RIT Public Safety is right on campus, so would be able to respond to any calls. We're in close proximity for on-campus convenience. We have 9-month contracts that coincide with the academic year, so you don't have to worry about subletting in the summer. And no early termination fees for students leaving for co-op or study abroad. So that's one of the things that RIT housing has a lot of flexibility built around understanding of student schedules. So if you're only going to be here for one semester, we can definitely work with you to customize something. All utilities and features are included. Wireless, Tiger TV, some free laundry, study rooms, and other resources. free shuttle service around campus, and to and from shopping and entertainment in the area. So after your admissions acceptance and you have paid your deposit, you will then have access to log into the My Life portal. There you can find, if you're interested in RIT housing, the 22-23 housing contract. I mentioned earlier, but students are then assigned to RIT housing on a space available basis, and we will kind of look at those application dates. So, if you apply sooner, you'll be looked at sooner for an assignment. And don't forget on your application to add your preferences. So do a little research, look at those different housing options and see what you think would be the best fit. And make sure you include that on your application, because that's what the assignment team will look at when we're assessing openings. So we are providing that on-campus living experience. If you're thinking about RIT housing, I would say go ahead and fill out a contract and apply. Sometimes different years, depending on our class sizes, we have different availability that's provided. But I do like to say to definitely apply. There's no cancellation fees if you don't have an assignment. So there's no harm in applying and having your application active with us. Once you do get an assignment, you would have get a confirmation email, and it would give you the timeline of either 3 to 5 days to either accept the assignment or to decline, and there's still no fee. So there's really no problem of applying and kind of waiting to see what happens. We send out regular email updates on our assignment progress. So we would be able to keep you updated, and so that you can make the best educated decisions for your housing as you're exploring your off-campus housing options as well. So that's a good segue to you, Virginia, because we're surrounded by a lot of other supportive housing complexes in the area. So there's a lot of things to consider.
Thank you, Jessica. Really appreciate it. And thank you again for your time today. Just curious, what, in terms of grad students, how many a year would you say roughly live on campus across the university?
Every year is very different. So it's hard to say percentage wise, and the difference between some years we get more applicants than others. So there's not really a standard number.
Okay, great. Awesome. Thank you very much. Again, appreciate it. Okay, Virginia, I'll turn it over to you. So if you just want to share your screen and your PowerPoint there, and then we'll start from there.
Great. Thanks for having me, Matt. So like you said, I'm going to go ahead and talk about just off-campus housing in general. And then I'll just talk about my own experience. It's a little different. Okay, just go back. Okay, so off-campus housing options. So when you look at any type of housing, you have to look at the typical stuff: transportation, costs, lifestyle, privacy, security. I think personally, the one that you should most consider if you're going to live on off-campus housing is transportation, because Rochester, the transportation system isn't that great. So if you want to get to campus, basically your options are have a car, walk, or make sure that shuttle passes through. So if anything, just look at transportation first and then go down the list on cost and privacy and all that. So off-campus student housing. So these names right here, the Province, Apex, the Lodge, Park Point, the Hill, those are some examples of student housing, off-campus student housing. So compared to non-student housing, which is just housing not catered to students, the amenities and utilities tend to be more adapted to student lifestyles. So what I mean by that is, like I said, transportation. They tend to have more transportation options. Usually that means shuttle services. Now the thing is that not all of them do, but some of them do. So that's another thing to consider. Like I said, the public transportation isn't that well structured. So if you don't plan to have a car, I would definitely recommend off-campus student housing that's catered to students. They do tend to have more security. They tend to have swipe access, things like that. They're closer to campus. They tend to be closer to campus. So you could walk as well if you didn't want to take the shuttle. and they tend to be more furnished. And if you aren't planning to live alone and you want a roommate, they tend to have more roommate options. So if you want to live with someone with a particular personality, they sometimes have like a list to see like what you want in a roommate, just to make sure that you're compatible, in other words, with the roommate. Now the cons. So off-campus student housing compared to like non-student housing, they tend to be more expensive. This is like more obvious when you live alone. Like if you're planning on living alone, it's going to be more expensive for student housing, most likely, to non-student housing. If you have a roommate though, you don't have to deal with that. They tend to have less space, like per square footage. They might be noisier. Again, this depends on, what room you're assigned, where you are, because more students tend to be, more noise, right? They tend to have more rules. They tend to have more restrictions. So sometimes they'll on the lease, it'll say that you can only have a guest for some odd days. You can only do this, you can only do that. So there are things to consider. Okay, now we're going to talk about non-student housing. So that's just like housing that's not catered to students. They tend to be cheaper. Again, if you're planning on living alone, then I would and you have a car, then I would like choose just like non-student housing, because it's going to be cheaper if you're planning on living alone. They tend to be more quiet. Again, this depends on who's around you, but like usually people assume like if there's less students, probably less noise. You have more freedom. They're not going to have like restrictions most likely on guests, things like that. And one thing that I only found out recently actually is that if you're living on student housing, some of them have restrictions on like having a parking pass. So you need a parking pass to go to campus, right? But if you go to like some student housing, I think like Apex and a couple of others, they won't let you buy a parking pass. So if you're planning on living on student housing and you have a car, just make sure, just like realize that you're probably not gonna be able to drive to campus. So I would read the lease on that just to make sure. So the cons, again, about transportation, they usually don't have transportation to RIT, okay? They're further away from campus, and the amenities aren't really based on student lifestyles, so they're not gonna have most likely like a game lounge, like things like that. And they're usually like not furnished. Okay, so the most important thing about off-campus housing, you got to start searching early, okay? Don't make the same mistake I did and like searched in like late June and then realize, oh wait, like there's no options. And the reason behind that is because there's like a lot of colleges and universities around Rochester. So the housing market is really competitive. Like in my experience, June, July, and August are like super competitive. So even if you're, looking, you might call them up, be like, hey, is this available? And it's not gonna be available. So I recommend actually start searching now. We're in, what day are we? We're in late March. I will start searching now and just see what your options are, because in my experience from last year, usually like June and July is when it gets really busy. And in August, is just you're kind of in a situation there. Okay, so this is what I had to do. I had to search for an apartment without being able to look at it in person. So how did I do that? Well, the first thing I did is I had to read online reviews, okay? And the thing about reviews is you have to make sure that they're not biased. So I actually recommend not looking at the apartment's websites, because sometimes people are willing to admit this in the reviews, people get paid for it, they get paid to say something nice about it. So I would go to more like non-biased websites like Google reviews, and they'll be honest with you and just like read through them and make your own decisions. And another thing you could do is you could call the apartment yourself to see how they manage stuff. So even though they might sound nice on the website, if you call them up, you might find that they never answer the phone. You might that it's like complicated to get things done. So start with like online reviews and then call them yourself. And make sure you heavily research the apartment too. You want to look at photos on the apartment websites and other websites, because on the apartment website, they're going to show you the best stuff. They might say, like they have certain amenities as well. But then if you actually like read it carefully or you call them up, it might not be what it seems. So for example, they might say, oh, they have free Wi-Fi, but if you read it carefully, it's like, oh, it's just actually in the community buildings. So you just want to like be super careful and make sure that you understand everything. Calling them up usually helps clear things up, but if it's like still not clear, I recommend just asking a copy for their lease and just like read it carefully. Another reason you want to do that is because sometimes there's like little details that are important to you, like having a washer or dryer, but then on the lease it says, oh, you can't have a washer and dryer. So you just want to make sure that you have everything that you want and it's all well understood for you. So this is actually something I figured out when I was searching for housing. So I'm from Texas and I could not come over here to New York just to look at housing. So when I was in the thick of it and I couldn't find housing, I kind of exhausted all my options through apartments.com and all those websites. So what I actually did is through Google Maps, I just put like RIT, which is right here. And I just like zoomed in on Google Maps and then I put in apartments and then apartment listings came up that did not show up on other websites. It's pretty crazy. And it was actually that way that I was able to find my current housing. So like, this is kind of like a last ditch effort here. If like you can't find any housing, you're kind of like panicking, like go to Google Maps, like get RIT here, get like the distance that you want, put apartments, and you're gonna find listings that aren't listed on other websites. I don't know why that is, but it's pretty cool. Another way you can find housing is to join Facebook, social media, just to get more housing listings like this right here, this Facebook group. They tend to post like housing options like all the time, like every day. There's always someone who's looking to like sublet, someone who's looking for a roommate. So that's another great option to look at. And you can also just like ask classmates and see if they're looking for a roommate as well. So this is basically the summary here. You want to consider your lifestyle. Do you want to live alone? Do you want certain amenities? Just make sure you keep that in mind. But transportation, like I said, definitely keep that in mind because you got to get to campus. I recommend making an Excel sheet, just like transportation, budget, space, things that are important to you, and just go down the list. And again, the most important thing is search early. Search early. I would definitely recommend at least starting in May to search for housing. The sooner the better, but May I think would be like the limit. And another thing to keep in mind is that for student housing and just regular housing, you're probably going to need a co-signer. Okay, this can be a parent, someone who trusts you. You can also be yourself, but I would contact the apartment to see how they handle that. You can go to like websites like Leap Easy to see if if you need a guarantor and you don't have one. I don't recommend doing that because it's very expensive. I believe it's like absurd amount, like 3 times the amount of rent. Most housing do accept co-signers in my experience, but again, make sure that they do because not all of them do. And you can also search more than just apartment websites. Like I said, you can go through Google Maps, you can just zoom in, and put apartments, and you'll find listings that aren't listed there. You can go to Facebook, which I also recommend, word of mouth, and just make sure you keep all this in mind, especially searching early. And this right here, this website right here, it kind of summarizes basically all I said about finding your housing. And that's basically it. So on my experience, this is basically what I had to do. Let me just go back here. I had to read all my reviews. I had to heavily research the apartment, and I also asked for the lease agreement. Those are definitely things that I would do if you can't show up and look at it yourself. And that does it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Virginia. That was fantastic. Really helpful stuff for our students coming in. I really appreciate that insight. So yeah, so that wraps the kind of formal components for this session. Do I have any questions from our staff on the call? I see we just had one student jump on as well, but any questions from anybody for Virginia or Jessica?
No, hi, I'm Melody. I'm an advisor, and that was great. Both of you, it helped me learn a lot from an advising point of view, and students ask me questions about housing. So thank you.
Yeah, I think it's definitely one of those things that certainly comes up, and I think it's, you know, it's a different animal for grad students, as we know. So it's definitely really helpful to have this context and, you know, contextualize things for the students. Anything else? Any other questions for anybody?
Just like to reiterate that I really appreciate your support and that both of you gave your time today for this important session. It's one that we've been wanting to do, and this is the first year we've done it. So thank you.
Yeah, we definitely appreciate it. And again, we'll there'll be quite a few students that are going to view it after the fact here. But again, thank you all for those that were able to jump on the session itself. And again, for those that are viewing it at a later time, if you have questions, I know Virginia shared some links, so definitely let us know if you want those and need that information, but certainly feel free to reach out with any follow-up questions. But thanks again, everybody, and have a good day. Appreciate it. Bye.
Thank you.